Hi, I'm Fran Drescher, and all of us at Cancer Schmancer are so excited to bring you our Health and Wellness Masterclass, absolutely free. Do you ever wonder why you get sick, what causes cancer, and how you can reduce you and your family's risk? Well, we've put a lot of time, energy, and passion into bringing you the most cutting-edge information from amazing doctors who think outside of the box, leaders in health and wellness with a fresh perspective on what we can do for ourselves, options to consider when diagnosed, and new strategies to not only survive, but thrive. I have made improving our health my life's mission because I am a cancer survivor, but it took me 2 years and 8 doctors to get a proper diagnosis. Thank goodness I had a slow-growing cancer, or my outcome might not have been so good. Now I have turned my pain into purpose, so I'm committed to sharing everything I've learned with you, all the brilliant doctors and scientists I have met over my nearly 2 decades of survival. That's why I'm bringing you this master class so you won't have to go through what I did. Watching this free health and wellness masterclass, I hope you will feel more empowered and less helpless and walk away with a game plan. With 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women expected to get cancer, babies being born pre-polluted with 200 to 300 chemicals found in the umbilical cord, and kids predicted to not live as long as their parents for the first time in U.S. history, the time is now to take control of your body. I'm thrilled you're here, and I know it will make a difference. Now grab a pen and notepad because we're about to blow your mind. Thank you so much for being a part of our journey of wellness. Now we've got a wonderful doctor. We're going to move into heart health now. And I don't know whether people realize that, first of all, the heart is impacted by many different things in our life. Radiation impacts the heart, and flying airplanes impacts the heart, and diet impacts the heart, and stress impacts the heart, and the list goes on and on. Also, the way women experience heart problems is very different from the way men experience that, and I hope that the doctor will clarify that as well for us, because it's important to know, because a misconception is that, you know, cancer is the biggest killer, but actually heart attacks are the biggest killer of women. So, and what we see on television, obviously, is male symptoms. So when a man feels his arm getting stiff, he knows he's having a heart attack. But if a woman feels a tightness around the back or where her bra is, she may not know that that's a heart attack because she's not feeling it in the arm the way the television actor portrays it. And then she's done amazing discoveries on how cacao, you know, just eating chocolate is so healthy for the heart. And this gal is just a brilliant woman. She's from UC San Diego. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Pam Taub. And look how gorgeous she is. This is a doctor.
It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Well, it's great. It's great to be here today. I hope you can hear me well. I'm recovering from a cold given to me by my 4-year-old son. I always joke, whenever you get viruses and infections from kids, it's like the bubonic plague. It's like the worst mutation of the virus. So pardon me as I have a little bit of a raspy voice. I want to talk to you today about a lot of different things, but the first thing that I'm going to talk about as you're all getting ready for lunch is the health benefits of dark chocolate. I've spent over 10 years of my career doing hardcore science to show some of those benefits. And then I'm going to talk to you about some of the implications for you personally, what you should be doing every day. And then I see that there's a lot of women in the room, so I really do want to talk about heart disease, screening for heart disease, and some of the things that you should all be talking to your physicians about. What was really interesting is in the last couple of panels, people had started talking about cacao, and Fran had also mentioned how ancient cultures teach us so much. And I really believe that's so true with medicine today. I feel a lot of what we're doing is rediscovering what the ancient civilizations already knew. So for instance, turmeric, the health benefits of turmeric have been known for thousands of years, but we're starting to do research and show that it has anti-cancer benefits. And similarly with cacao, there's a lot of incredible cardiovascular benefits that ancient cultures know. I love history, and I am a student of every type of historical medicine, and so I was really fascinated to read about the history of cacao. So when you look at the ancient cultures of the Aztecs and the Mayans, they understood that cacao was very beneficial. They thought it was a sacred object. And if you look at some of their ancient artwork, you see that in their gods, they actually embed a cacao pod. They also believed that when you eat cacao, you are strong and invincible. And so this is a Mayan warrior. And what you see on his arms is these little cacao pods sticking out. And it's very interesting because a lot of my research comes back to what was already known by the Mayans.
Hi, isn't this great? I'm enjoying it and I can't wait to go back and watch more. But I just wanted to take a moment to tell you that you can purchase all of these wonderful speakers as a downloadable purchase that, by the way, is a tax-deductible donation to Cancer Schmancer. You can have all these wonderful speakers at your fingertips whenever you want for reference, or share it with your friends and family. So if you click below, you can make a downloadable purchase, tax deductible for Cancer Schmancer donation, and enjoy it whenever you want. Thank you so much for subscribing, and now let's get back to more wonderful illuminating speakers.
Very interesting about the cacao story is in the 1960s and 70s, researchers from Harvard looked at a group of Indians living on the coast of Panama called the Kuna Indians. And they noticed that these Indians did not have any heart disease, they didn't have any diabetes, they didn't have any cancer. So they decided to take a trip to this island and study these Indians because they thought these Indians had some superior genetics. But what was really interesting is after a lot of research, they realized it wasn't superior genetics, it was actually what they were eating. And what these Indians do is they consume high amounts of cacao. They don't do it like we do with the artificial and processed chocolate. They actually go to the cacao plant and they make a beverage that they consume a couple of times a day. And so after a lot of research, what they discovered is it wasn't superior genetics that led to these Indians having such superior health. It was really the consumption of this cacao beverage. And as I mentioned before, this again goes back to what these ancient civilizations already knew, is just how beneficial cacao was. Well, there is a particular compound in cacao, which is called Epicatechin, which is the compound that I've spent a lot of time doing research on, which is thought to be responsible for the low incidence of cardiovascular disease in these Indians. So this is from a scientific paper, but I think it's very important. When you look at the incidence of cardiovascular disease in the United States and you compare it to the Kuna Indians, it's drastically different. So in the United States, you have 250 people per 100,000 having cardiovascular disease. On the island, you only have about 9 people out of 100,000 suffering from cardiovascular disease. What's interesting is when these Kuna Indians go to mainland Panama, they don't continue their habit of drinking this cacao beverage. So they lose some of that protection they've had from drinking the cacao beverage. Similarly, with cancer, in the United States, about 175 per 100,000. On the island, only about 4 people per 100,000 have cancer. So now this is a very scientific slide, but I'm going to try to make it more palatable. So one of the things that's really interesting about this compound, epicatechin, is it increases levels of nitric oxide. How many of you have heard of nitric oxide? Okay, so nitric oxide is a very important compound in the body. So when you exercise, your body releases nitric oxide. It's nitric oxide that's thought to be responsible for a lot of the beneficial effects of exercise. So what we know is that this compound that's present in cacao increases levels of nitric oxide. It also decreases the bad cholesterol. It improves your blood sugars. It prevents age-related decline in your kidney function. So it has a lot of very beneficial effects. So this was one of my early studies that I did with rats. Of course, when you do science, you start with animals and then you move on to humans. And what you see here is 2 rats. One rat was treated with epicatechin, and another rat had no treatment. And after the treatment, we induced a heart attack. And what you see is in the rat that got no treatment, there's a large area of his heart that is white, and that is dead tissue. The rat that got the epicatechin, you see, has preserved tissue. So this was one of the first studies in the literature that showed that this compound found in cacao had beneficial effects. This was a subsequent study that I published, taking some of the research from the animals to humans. And what I did is I did a pilot study at the Veterans Hospital in San Diego, and I took 5 veterans who were very sick. They had heart failure, they had diabetes, and I gave them dark chocolate in a powdered form for a 3-month period. And then I looked to see how well they did. And what I found is after that 3-month treatment, they were walking better, they were just overall functioning better. And so based on many studies that I've done over the past 10 years, I've also discovered a new role for epicatechin that wasn't previously described in the literature, which is that epicatechin actually improves your mitochondria. So this is something that you may be familiar with from high school biology, which is mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's what gives you energy. It's what's responsible for metabolism. When people have diabetes, it's because the mitochondria is not working well. So that is what we have shown. And one of the things that I do as part of my research, don't gasp, is I do skeletal muscle biopsies. I take a tiny little piece of skeletal muscle and we look at it under the electron microscope. It doesn't hurt because I numb it up very well and patients come back for more and more. But it's really an important tool to understand what's going on at the level of the cells. And what we saw is in these patients that we gave dark chocolate to, their mitochondria improved. So this is, again, a very scientific slide, but what you see in the bottom slide is the mitochondria actually have these nice folds called cristae. That's where ATP is produced, which gives us energy. So that's one of the things that we've shown that dark chocolate can do. This is also another electron microscopy picture just showing the skeletal muscle. What you see before is the skeletal muscle is kind of mushy and amorphous. And that was very consistent with how the patients were able to function. They were walking across the room and they were getting short of breath. And what you see after treatment is there's much more scaffolding and architecture to the skeletal muscle. So that was after the 3 months of a treatment with cacao. So going back to the ancient cultures, I haven't really discovered anything new. I've just kind of defined what some of these ancient cultures already described, which is that when you consume cacao, you have more energy. So the warrior that's off to battle with the cacao pod, they knew that. And so basically what I've shown is kind of in a cellular level, that cacao can improve mitochondrial function. So it's funny because a lot of patients love me because they say, oh, I hear you do research on dark chocolate. But I tell them, actually, less is better. What my research has actually shown is there's a sweet spot for the beneficial effects. So when you start consuming too much chocolate, some of the beneficial effects are not as prominent. It's not that that goes away, but there's really a sweet spot. And that's because we looked at cellular cultures and we treated it with cells with different quantities of epicatechin, and we saw that at higher concentrations, the mitochondrial function actually started to diminish. And so I recommend to my patients to consume 2 small squares of dark chocolate, and the higher the concentration, the better. So if you can tolerate 90% cacao, great. If you can only tolerate 70%, that's also good. As long as it's over 70%, you're going to get some of the beneficial effects. So you notice that dark chocolate is bitter. Well, it's bitter because of the epicatechin. Epicatechin is what gives dark chocolate that bitter taste. So the more bitter your chocolate is, the better. So a lot of my patients are diabetic and they have problems with portion control. So there are other products out there. Again, I have no affiliation whatsoever with this company. I just think it's a good product. But CocoaVia is something that has epicatechin in it, and you can consume it as a small packet that you can put in water, or you can do it as a capsule. And I've also done studies in patients with CocoaVia demonstrating its benefits. So now that I've given you a little bit of overview of my research on dark chocolate, Fran had really wanted me to also talk to you about just cardiovascular disease in general. If we could play that video, I'm going to show you a couple of videos of my patients. So this is a patient of mine who came in with an acute myocardial infarction. What you see is that there's an artery that's completely cut off. If we can, again, play that video. And then on the next slide, you see the big bad cardiologist coming in and putting in a stent and opening up that artery. But is that really success? I sort of view this as a failure, that this person developed heart disease and had to have a stent. And I want to emphasize, a stent is just a Band-Aid. It's really fixing a focal part of the artery. Coronary disease is a diffuse disease. You have plaque that deposits everywhere in your body. And so to really address the diffuse nature of coronary disease, you really need to have aggressive lifestyle intervention, which I'm going to talk about. So in the next slide, what you're going to see is what I hope for everybody here, which is a beautiful coronary artery circulation with no plaque. And this was actually taken from one of my model patients who happens to be vegan, who happens to exercise at least 30 minutes a day, but who really underwent incredible lifestyle modification because she had a family history. So this is my wish for all of you, is you have that CT scan. And so one of the things that I often see is people ask me, what can I do? What are the best ways to detect coronary disease? Because a lot of people are symptomatic. So many people tell me the story of, I was in the gym and the person next to me died of a heart attack. Or I have a friend who's a marathon runner who did everything right and died of a heart attack. And so there's a lot of things out there, but a lot of it is garbage. When I say it's garbage, it's not really evidence-based. That means there's not a lot of studies that show that some of these screening modalities actually work. But I want to kind of sort through the garbage and kind of tell you a couple of blood tests that I think are incredibly useful in kind of going beyond the surface and trying to find people that are at risk for coronary disease. So I just listed a lot of different things that you can do. You could look at your carotids, you can look at different scans, you can look at blood tests, but there are some really good blood tests that you should be talking to your physician about. Most of us get a blood test called lipid panel. But our basic lipid panel doesn't give us enough information. We should be asking for a specific test called LDL particle number. And that test gives a lot more information than just conventional LDL. So here is an example of two people with the same LDL cholesterol, but the particle number is very different. This is a test that's cleared by the FDA, covered by almost all insurances, and has a really good evidence base backing its use. So this is a test that you should be asking for. Another test is, again, a blood test called lipoprotein A. 1 in 5 people have elevated lipoprotein A. And if you have an elevated lipoprotein A, you are at much higher risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. And you need to be screened for this, especially if you have a family history. So just remember, LDL particle number, lipoprotein A, 2 very evidence-based blood tests that are not very expensive and that most physicians should be able to order for you to give you a sense of, do you have more risk than what lies at the surface?
I'm so glad that we're watching the Fran Drescher Masterclass Health Summit together. Thank you so much for subscribing. Isn't it great? I can't wait to go back and watch more. But I just wanted to tell you that on October 23rd, we are going to be doing the Fran Drescher Masterclass Health Summit 2018. And it's going to be more exciting and better than ever. You can click below or go to cancerschmancer.org and get your tickets or watch us live streaming for free on October 23rd. But if you come in person, you'll get to meet me and some of these wonderful doctors that I promise you will rock your world.
So let me end by just talking about cardiovascular disease in women. Fran already talked about how women are much more complicated and women often don't have typical symptoms. I can't tell you how many times I'm in the emergency room evaluating someone with a heart attack and they'll tell me, oh yeah, I told my doctor 6 months ago that I was feeling fatigue, that I was getting sweaty when I was exercising, and they said, oh, you're just getting a hot flash, or you're just having anxiety, or I told my doctor that I'm getting some shortness of breath when I'm doing my usual walk, and they just said, oh, you just gained some weight. So women do have very different symptoms from men, and so when you feel that something just isn't right, make sure you push your doctor to really look for cardiovascular disease because it is very preventative. My good friend Dean Ornish could not be here today, and so I wanted to convey some of the things that he has done. So many of you know who Dean Ornish is, and I work very closely with Dean. And what Dean has really shown is good lifestyle modification actually works. So if you engage in a plant-based diet, if you have a narrowing in your coronary artery, that narrowing will actually go down. Statins don't do that. Statins, if anything, they stabilize plaque and they prevent the plaque from getting larger, but lifestyle intervention does work. And so one of the things that I really believe is that heart disease is preventable. And I love what Hippocrates said, which is let food be thy medicine. And that's one of the things I really try to impart on my patients is really have a good diet. I really don't want to be giving you the statins. And then there's a new cholesterol drug called PCSK9 inhibitors that are about $1,000. I really don't want to be giving that to you. Please engage in the right lifestyle modification. I put this picture here because this is when I was in Milan, and I just was sitting in a cafe, and I had to take a picture of this elegant woman with the cute shoes riding her bicycle. because this is what we should be doing. We should be more active and we should be eating better. When you go to Europe, you'll notice that the portions are half the size of what we serve here in the United States. And you notice that people are on average walking 5 to 10 miles a day in the cities. And so again, lifestyle is so important. Getting back to what Dean Ornish showed, he did give me the slide that he wanted me to present, just showing at the Ornish program at UCLA that in a particular patient, we actually saw a blockage going away after the patient engaged in the right dietary intervention. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you for your attention. And I also want to thank Fran, who's really such an inspiration with all of the advocacy that she's done in terms of educating us about good lifestyle intervention.
Can you get rid of plaque once you have it? I mean...
Definitely with lifestyle intervention.
Really? And you're not at risk of it like breaking off and going to your brain and having a horrible stroke?
You have that with procedures, so when we put in stents, that's when the plaque can go upstream.
I see.
But when you do it through dietary means, that doesn't happen.
And then it can dissipate. And is that almost always due to stress?
Stress exacerbates it because when you have stress, you have increased levels of inflammatory biomarkers like high sensitivity CRP or C-reactive protein. So when you take two people who are about the same and one person has very high levels of stress, their cortisol goes up, their level of inflammation goes up, and they're much more prone to a heart attack or stroke.
Oh, there's so much for us to know and learn, but thank you so much, Dr. Taub. You are just amazing. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Really wonderfully informative. Hi, it's me, your host, Fran Drescher. Thank you so much for watching. Wasn't that great? Now you have some tools to stay healthy and prevent disease, as well as fresh options to consider if, God forbid, you are sick. Cancer Schmancer's mission is to educate you and your loved ones on how to transform from patient into medical consumer. If you enjoyed this, if you learned something, if you want to know more, then please make sure you watch Fran Drescher's Health and Wellness Masterclass 2018, live streaming free on October 23rd at cancerschmancer.org. Please help us get this life-changing information out to as many people as possible so together we can all move into a healthier world. Share this with your friends and family. It's 100% free, so there's no downside. Remember, each one teach one. Please visit cancerschmancer.org to learn about our life-saving programs like Fran Vans offering low-income women free mammograms and Be the Change program targeting teens and tweens on staying healthy by checking labels, choosing safer products, and becoming the change the 21st century desperately needs. So happy that we had this time together and so grateful for your helping to spread the word so we can empower more people like yourself to crack the code on sickness. I love you. My prayers are for you to be well and have love and peace in your hearts.